Hi, this is Bill Seng Podcast. I'm Bill Seng, and I'm actually here today with a very special guest. I am with my dad, Dr. John D. Seng, and he has an optometry practice here in Findlay, and this is the Made in Findlay segment of the Bill Seng Podcast. So, Dad, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. Got some questions here for you just so that we can let people know about your practice and let people know why you're the best optometrist around. And I think there's a lot of people curious from a business sense about how to find their niche and everything in life. So when did you know that you wanted to become an optometrist?
I'd say it's about 10th grade, high school. I wanted to help people, and I was pretty good at academics. So I thought I had to do something in the medical field of some sort to try to help people.
Okay. How did you become aware of optometry?
Well, I became aware of it because I had an optometrist of my own. In 5th grade is when I first got my pair of glasses, and that was a wonderful revelation to be able to see. And I thought that was pretty cool. My sister had some special needs with her eyes, and so we had a lot of training in the family that way. I just kind of over time added things together, regular medical doctor, dentist, chiropractor, optometrist, what was going to work for me, and I added it all up together, and it seemed to come to optometry.
And I have to say, one of the fascinating things, by the way, for the listeners, I worked out there for 7 years, and one of the things I found fascinating about optometry particularly is you mix in several aspects of the healthcare profession and business in general that one, you're a doctor. 2, there's a retail side of it. 3, you have to do with insurances. And there's just so much to it that I think that certain other physicians don't have to deal with necessarily with their professions. So I always found that pretty fascinating, the inner workings of it all. So you graduated from The Ohio State University.
That's correct.
And what was that like going to, do I always have to say when I say Ohio State University? I'll just say Ohio State University. What was that like when you went out there? What was your experience?
Well, we didn't have to say The Ohio State University at the time. That's a fairly new thing there that they say that. But Ohio State University, I went in there undergraduate, spent 2 years, did a lot of studying. You're supposed to have 4 years in to get into optometry college, and I was very fortunate that I was able to squeeze it all into 2 and get accepted into the College of Optometry after just 2 years of undergraduate work. I met my wife, Debbie, her first day on campus, my second year on campus there. So Ohio State's pretty special to us.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, are you still the youngest graduate from the optometry college?
I'm one of the youngest. We had another fellow in our class within a month or two of me. But I graduated in optometry class 1982. I was 24 years old. Most have to have a bachelor's degree before they even get into optometry college, and that was not required of me. I was able to get in with a pretty good academic record.
So that's pretty impressive, and I think that says there's a whole lesson in there, I think, about where college has gone today as far as all that's concerned. How long have you been practicing optometry?
This year it's been 40 years.
40 years. I know that you've done things differently than a lot of optometrists have. Lots of them get involved with an existing practice. And I remember growing up, there was quite a few around and lots of competitors out there in that regard. But you decided to do something a little bit different. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, I've had a lot of different experiences. I originally got out and I was going to purchase a practice of another fellow, and I got him all excited about practicing again, and he decided not to retire. I set up the office kind of across town from him, private practice, and that's when private practice started for me. I had some other commercial practices that I worked with to get me by in the meantime, but eventually we ended up back here in Findlay because my wife was from Findlay. She was born and raised here, and that's where we're currently practicing.
Yeah, so quite a journey there. And going to owning your own private practice, I imagine, came with lots of challenges, lots of stress, and that people today, they see you practicing for 40 years. And something I've noticed with business in general is when you have a well-established business, people love it. But it's hard to find the appreciation for those guys that are starting off and getting a business going because there's lots of bumps in the road, lots of challenges, lots of Would you say risk even involved with that as well?
There's huge risk. There's a lot of money involved with having to set up an optometry practice, even more so than most medical doctors have to set up, because we have the inventory of the eyeglasses and contact lenses. We've got equipment that's just outrageously expensive, each piece of equipment, the microscopes, the retinal cameras, the visual fields devices, the cameras for the microscopes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's pretty expensive. You've got to borrow a lot of money, and if you're setting up cold, then you've got to find a place to rent or purchase. You've got to remodel it. There's a lot of stress there, and that's actually what drove me to accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior, because it took me to a really dark place. It was so depressing, all the money that was involved that I had to borrow, and that at the moment we weren't taking in. I was getting behind.
You know, and I had Josh Elkert from Heavenly Pizza on here, and one of the things that he talked about is using their pizza business, of all things, to spread the gospel message, and that just blew me away. That was their intention from the very beginning, that it wasn't like an afterthought. That I know that you came to know Christ after you had started practicing as an optometrist. And after that happened, how did that affect how your business operated?
Well, I guess to answer that question, I'd have to say I started sharing Christ with people. I made sure to set up my office to have reminders all around it, where I didn't even have to necessarily say something to people, to realize that Jesus was in our life and that we would really like him to be in their life as well. We actually pray with patients at times. Seems that they need some help there. We really promote God. Jesus is our Savior, and we want others to know it, and we'd like him to be theirs as well.
It's a very intentional thing, and I've noticed that a good number of the people working for you are family, but I've also noticed that I think the employees encourage one another in that regard with their faith. I have noticed at times they even encourage some of the customers on their way out. You know, it's become sort of like background to me, so I don't even notice it anymore, but I also know that inside of your office, both in the exam room and outside in the reception area, that there is Christian radio while you're there. You guys still have that out in the reception room as well?
Yeah, out in the reception area. I think my employees listen to K-Love out there. In my exam room, I listen to WTGN. I like that station because of the mix of preaching, teaching, music, weather, et cetera, et cetera. And through that station, one time I actually did have a patient ask me if I was a Christian because of that. And they asked me tons and tons of questions, and I tried to lead them on to, what is God all about? What's with Jesus? And that fellow went home that night and contacted me the next day saying he gave his life to Jesus that night. That was special.
Oh, that's cool. Well, that kind of went along with the question I was going to ask, being what are your best memories as an optometrist? I'm sure that probably ranks up there for sure as it relates to that. But also, again, still talking about just the level of faith expressed inside of your practice. And it's impossible to miss. Your logo is an eye with a cross in it. So, I mean, if you miss the hint there, then just nothing else is going to get to you, I think. I remember toward the end of the time that I was working out there, you took on a new line of glasses called Eyes of Faith. Even, and they just get better as the time goes on. And if I'm not mistaken, that they have been marketing their brand even through some big time Christian artists, which is really cool. So just everything about it seems like is really, I mean, ever since you gave your life to Christ, has really focused around honoring and glorifying God. What can you think of anything else that really sticks out to you regarding, just times when you're just so glad that you've made the decisions to be an optometrist here in Findlay, at your practice, or maybe not just here in Findlay, because I know that you practiced in Lima for a little bit. Sugar Creek, is that right? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I've practiced in actually over 20 offices altogether. Not a long time necessarily. Sometimes I was just filling in for another doctor, but I've had a lot of different experiences, different types of practices. Now that one with the radio and that one fellow gave his life, that was a really important spiritual memory. I had two of my employees give their life. They had me pray with them. gave their life to Jesus in the office, oddly enough. And that was not at my request, that was at their request. So it wasn't like I was bullying them or anything. They were going through tough times, and it looked like I had the answer, and they wanted to participate in that. So far as some other professional things, we've caught some really interesting cases where their medical doctors had missed a couple of them were brain tumors, aneurysms in the brain, all kinds of fun stuff like that. I mean, it's not fun stuff, but it's really interesting when your specialty is eyes, and you're able to find brain tumors that others who had that specialty actually missed. So those are a couple of the exciting ones. One of them was even a friend of ours that it happened to. I can't mention any names because that would break confidence, but there's been a lot of exciting stuff.
Yeah, and I know that that's something I have mentioned to people as well. That lots of things that you find are things that lots of other doctors miss. And, and I'm going to make this statement right here. Somebody might maybe not verbally articulate this, but they might ask, why would I go to Dr. Seng's office? And when I see people come into your office, they're getting a thorough exam, dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's, making sure that they are aware of what the next step is. And I know that we've had some people like, this is too expensive. I can't do this. And they end up going to somewhere cheaper. And when they come, then and eventually they come back and say, yeah, I wasn't satisfied with that. So, if they want just a cheap exam and just get a prescription, maybe that's their way to go. But quite frankly, I don't know why you would sacrifice your eye health for just a prescription.
A lot of people just don't understand all that's involved with the eye health part of the examination. We try to coach people like you do every place else. You get what you pay for. And when you come to our office, you get caring. We spend the extra time, look into the more detailed problems that you might have. I never hold back on referring to somebody else that might know something, be able to do something a little bit better, like a neurologist or a cardiologist or whatever we find that's out of the ordinary that they need help with. We don't hold back on referring, and we share the information with their other doctors, and their doctors share the information with us. So we really try to keep up on things for the patient, and we're looking after the whole patient, not just a set of eyeballs.
Yeah, and that, I mean, yes, there's a professional aspect. There's definitely a humanitarian aspect to that, in that the people walking through the doors, they aren't just dollar signs walking through the doors. I mean, you have to be watching out financially, but still on the same token, the thoroughness of the exam, that's watching out for people. That's taking care of people and making sure that I remember times you mentioned brain tumors and stuff, that people's lives have, not just their souls, but their lives, their physical lives have been saved because of an eye exam that you've given them, and oftentimes after another optometrist had missed something that had been developing over time. And I find that really remarkable. You just mentioned about there's a lot of things that people don't understand about eye health. And I know that growing up, I got to, I had a little bit more inside information about that. And so when I would be in school and see certain things people were doing, I'd be like, they're not supposed to be doing that. And mind you, I was also guilty of it as well at times. Right now, I think I need my glasses adjusted even. I've noticed that they're bent a little bit. But what are some of the biggest mistakes that people make in relation to their, generally speaking, day-to-day life, things that people aren't necessarily considering that harms their eye health?
Well, harming their eye health, so many people look at contact lenses. They want to wear contacts, and they don't pay attention to the proper instructions for wearing them. Taking them out when you're supposed to, cleaning them, replacing them when you're supposed to. And that damages people's eyes, and it's permanent damage that usually occurs. And I've had hundreds and hundreds of patients go through that terrible thing just because they didn't follow directions. In some places, it didn't even apparently give them proper directions, and we have to correct those errors to try to protect our patients. Other problems, so many people rub their eyes when they're irritated. Well, rubbing your eyes, first of all, is going to cause your eye to swell more. Secondly, that's, in my opinion, is the number one cause of eye infections. You know, I don't mind seeing you with an eye infection, but you might as well not get it to start with by not rubbing your eyes. If you have health problems, you need to get your eyes checked regularly, because we can look directly at your blood vessels and what's going on in your body just by looking in the eye. If we see something there, then we can refer you off to the proper follow-up doctor, your medical doctor, whether it's cardiology or rheumatology or neuro or whatever you need at the time. We can get you taken care of quicker that way, rather than you just leaving it sit and fester and getting a lot worse before something gets done.
Put this in because you mentioned about contacts. That's one of the ones where I've had so many people say to me that they sleep in their contacts, and these are the ones that you can sleep in. You kind of cringe there a little bit. Can you, before I move on to what I was going to say, you want to explain that a little bit?
Well, from what I've seen in 40 years of experience, anybody who has been sleeping in their contact lenses damages their eyes. And the percentage that I've seen over 40 years of people that damage their eyes that sleep in their lenses happens to be 100%. Everybody hurts their eyes by sleeping in contacts, whether they're approved to sleep in or not. That's the FDA that does the approving, and that's your government, and think about that one.
So we can kind of put two and two together with that. Glasses. I don't know if you have anything to weigh in on here, but I know that one of the biggest things that I've noticed, and I used to do this, and in fact, this is how I broke my glasses for the first time, is in Hollywood movies, the way they take their glasses off. One hand, they just whip them off, Robert Downey Jr. style, and it looks cool, and it's fast. And that's how most people do it. It turns out that that is really, really bad for your glasses. And I've even talked to people that I've seen at work about that say their glasses, or their child's glasses or whatever, just fell apart. I was like, well, how do they take their glasses off their face? So what do you mean? Well, do they take them off with one hand or two? Well, I think they, two, but sometimes I think they do it with one. Do they do it mostly with one? Maybe. The answer is yes. The answer is yes. My goodness, we went into glasses. I'm sure you could probably give lots and lots and lots of advice about.
We could spend hours on that.
Yeah. Is there anything particularly about glasses that you would advise people on? Like if you were to break it down just to one major thing that people need to know about wearing glasses, can you think of one thing? Yeah.
Well, I think you're correct in saying how you put them on and take them off. If you do it with one hand or don't lift the temples off your ears first, you're going to mess up your hinges. You're going to break your hinges. You can break the nose piece in the middle there, and you just got to be careful how you're doing that. Just lift them off your ears and then set them back on yours. Two hands, not just one.
Oh yeah, and in your case or on your face as well. I'm bad about that one, by the way. But
it's best to be on your face. I mean, if you wear them all the time, you're not going to lose them. That's a big one. And nobody's going to step on them, the dog's not going to get them, and etc. Now, unfortunately, sometimes an infant will get them while you're cuddling with them, but that's okay, we got more.
I coached wrestling for a number of years, and I remember one time I was up in the practice room, and I was getting ready for practice. I was standing in an area, this I'll put it to kind of preface it, I was standing in an area where I was pretty vulnerable. I still had my glasses on. And one of the teachers tackled me from behind and wanted to wrestle with me, but we both wear glasses. My focus was, okay, just make sure your face is safe. Don't fight back, because if you do, you're wrecking your glasses. Well, he kept on going and kept on going. And once we broke up, guess what happened? His glasses were broken in half. Yeah. So, I mean, there's things you might think seem cool when you're wearing glasses, but the reality is they're so valuable too. They're such a useful instrument. Just take proper care of them. If you want to get rough, but take them off first. Put them in that case first before you start getting rough. Otherwise, you're going to have to run in to see my dad and get another pair. LASIK. What would you say about LASIK at this stage? Do you think that it's something that people should... I know that you've cautioned people in the past about it. Would you still caution people on a surgery like that?
Oh, I still caution people with LASIK. I had 3 patients who had bad results with LASIK to the point where they had to have corneal transplant surgery. There's a lot of risk involved, even though the surgeons that are marketing it are saying it's very, very minimal. Yeah, for most people they get by real well, but if you're the one that doesn't go well, you could end up losing your eye, or at least having a corneal transplant, which is a pretty serious thing, where they cut out part of your eye, and then
that sounds fun.
Yeah, cut out part of a dead person's eye and put it in your eye and sew it there. If your body accepts it, you're in. If your body doesn't accept it and rejects it, well, then you can lose your eye, and that's just not pretty. So I just caution people they need to understand that that is a risk. 10 years down the road after you've had your LASIK, the prescription is going to change. You're going to become more farsighted. That's just what we're seeing. If you're 40 plus, it does not correct for bifocals and trifocals, so you're going to end up with glasses or contacts anyhow. So, you got to weigh out what you're looking for. If it's a temporary fix or a permanent fix, permanent's not going to work, but a temporary fix, yeah, for a little bit if you have good results. If you have bad results, we don't even want to talk about that. That's just terrible.
Yeah, and my personal and I'm not the doctor speaking, by the way, but my personal recommendation, go with glasses. I risk all those things. And one of the places where I work, dust in the air everywhere, and it's like, I know people that wear contacts out there, but, and I've talked to them and say, so how's that going for you? Their response is, I like it, but if I get a speck of dust in there, then it's agonizing. At the end of the day, glasses, I think, are still king. It's particularly for me, I'm a big fan of the Eyes of Faith now. I got a pair of Eyes of Faith glasses on right now, and that'll probably be my next pair of glasses too. So we got lots of the professional side of being an optometrist, and so we're going to go more into a faith aspect right now, and I would say a little bit more fun. So. And we were talking a little bit about this before we started up today, but what is your favorite book of the Bible?
Well, like I said before, I don't really have a favorite book. I mean, the whole thing is God's Word, and I trust that. I have a favorite topic, if you would, and that's eschatology, I believe, and that's where it talks about end times that Daniel was talking about, and many of the other Old Testament books in the end of the books would talk about. And Jesus actually talked about it in some of the Gospels. And Revelation, of course, is all about that. I think that's my favorite topic, is looking into that. And that's a lot because we're seeing what's going on right now in the world that the Bible has already told us was going to be happening. And it's just exciting to see these things click off one at a time that God has told us about ahead of time. He prophesied this to us, and it's just so exciting to see His Word coming true.
One of the, I think that when most people would think of end times, they automatically think Revelation. But you mentioned Daniel there, and you mentioned before, in a conversation we had before, that is, that a lot of stuff at the end of each of the prophetic books focuses on the end times. And I know that I mentioned in church one Sunday, and this kind of bouncing back to Revelation though, is that, and I didn't mention the person's name, I'll go ahead and mention it right now. It was Elon Musk was being interviewed, and he said that, he was asked a question about the Bible, and he said, I wish Revelation maybe had a better ending to it. And I thought to myself, what are you clearly either, obviously I don't believe Musk to be a Christian, and two, being like, we must not have read the same book of Revelation. I think that Revelation's ending is, how does it get any, what do you want at the end of book of Revelation to make it any better than what it is? I mean, God's people living eternally, no more suffering, no more pain, wipes every tear from the eyes, living with God for all eternity with Jesus Christ by His side. It's like, what more is there to make it a happy book than all of that happening? Mankind reconciled to God. I mean, incredible.
I think the difficulty is that the Bible was a love letter written to His family. And if you're not part of the family, you're not going to understand what He's talking about. If you're part of the family and you read the whole book, the whole letter, to the end of the book, we win. So there's nothing wrong with the end of the book. The end of times is because God's promises are coming true, and his blessings are going to fully come upon us, and we're just going to realize everything that he's been promising to us.
I've heard even Christians say that the book of Revelation scares them. And I say, why does it scare you? We win.
If you read the whole Bible, and you got to read it more than once, there's just so much to God to understand, and he will keep revealing himself to you. But if you read the rest of his word and take it in and digest it, you're going to very, very much enjoy Revelation, because like Bill just said, we win. All the blessings are going to come to us, the gifts and everything that he's promised for us is going to be coming through.
Do you have a favorite verse inside of the Bible? By the way, my he's read the Bible 35 times through, like read it all the way through 35 times. That's a lot to take in. And so he's not focusing in on one small piece of the Bible. He's read the whole thing a lot of times. Do you have a favorite Bible verse?
Well, I have different verses for different things. It depends what you're looking at. I like people to look at John 3:16 because that's what people need to know about. We need to share. I have an interesting verse. It was Genesis 18:19, I believe. I had a question for God. Why did you pick me? And he pointed that verse out to me, that he had picked Abraham because he felt Abraham would tell his family, his prodigy, his kids about God. And I believe that's what he was telling me.
So lots of stuff you can learn from the Bible if you read it, especially if you're in it every single day and you're not just reading portions. You're not just reading the New Testament. You're not just reading the Old Testament. It's God's word from beginning to end, and it's important to understand it in that light. And if you don't understand one portion of it, my best advice is drudge through the parts you don't understand until you get to something you understand, because eventually it will all start to make sense. And it's a lifelong journey, by the way. You're never going to understand all of it.
And speaking of understanding, I run into special cases where while I'm reading through the Bible, I have a daily Bible and I read it every single day. That's how I start my day. But I'll get to a portion that I don't understand or that it's just not registering for some reason. I go back and reread it and reread it and reread it, and God will reveal what he wants. Sometimes that's him flagging me down and saying, hey, pay attention to this. I want you to understand what I'm telling you here. So, if you don't understand something, don't always just fret and skip over it. You might want to go back over it again because he might be trying to tell you something.
And it's incredible. Sometimes you reread a portion, you're like, I don't remember that detail right there. Where did that come from? I guarantee you that was not there before, but it's always been there. And it's amazing. And it reminds me of the times when in the Gospels that John particularly would look back at a certain moment inside of Jesus' ministry where he would say that we didn't know what he was talking about then, but then he revealed it to us after the resurrection. And I think that's what God does to it. He saves those things for those moments in time. Let's see here. How long did it take God to create the universe?
If you want to say create everything, including the earth and mankind and all that, it took him 6 days.
This one's kind of random, but what was your favorite day of creation?
Wow. I don't know that I have a favorite day, but I enjoy reading the Bible to find out the length of a day, because I believe he actually created everything in 6 days, even the 24-hour days that we know now. And you can see that if you read the first chapter in Genesis and read through the first several paragraphs. You will see that in there, that a day was defined before the sun and moon came around, or the earth itself. So God set the sun and the moon to register and let us know what that day was. But the day existed before that even existed.
That's pretty much all the questions I have here for you today. Is there anything else you want people to know, either about eye health or about your faith or anything before we wrap up here?
The most important thing is, even if you call yourself a Christian or just going to church or whatever, if you haven't given your life to Jesus, you need to do that. That's the number one most important thing in life that there is you giving your life to Jesus Christ, that he becomes your Lord and Savior and he governs your life. You give it all to him. That's the number one thing.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. And again, that is my dad, Dr. John Seng. His office is located on 800 North Main Street. If you don't know where that is, Domino's Pizza is right beside it on Main Street. So make sure, if you need an eye exam, go ahead and schedule an appointment with him. He'll get you taken care of at the highest quality possible. Again, I thank you for joining me today for the Bill Seng Podcast Made in Findlay segment. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.